Welcome to Uncovered Biblical History and Traditions, the channel dedicated to lost stories of the biblical past. Discover stories of pre-Christian historical roots, biblical legends, lost church history, and forgotten historical characters of faith. It is very helpful if you hit the like, subscribe, and share. Help build my channel, and let's take a look together into these uncovered forgotten tales. What if everything you thought you knew about ancient Britain was wrong? What if the white-robed priests standing among the stone circles of Stonehenge weren't savage pagans performing human sacrifices, but sophisticated theologians who believed in the same God worshipped by Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? What if these mysterious Druids weren't obstacles to Christianity's arrival in Britain, but had actually been preparing the ground for it for over 1,000 years? Welcome to a story that historians have largely ignored, a tale of remarkable religious connections spanning continents and millennia, where Hebrew phrases were preserved in Cornish folklore, where Trinity doctrine flourished centuries before Christ's birth, and where the transition from ancient British religion to Christianity was so seamless that it amazed even contemporary observers. Picture ancient Britain around 320 BC. A Greek writer named Hecataeus visits these mysterious islands and returns home with extraordinary tales. He describes inhabitants who worship in magnificent temples, where golden harp-wielding minstrels sing hymns to their deity, and where priesthood passes from father to son in an unbroken sacred lineage. But here's what's truly remarkable: this isn't the primitive nature worship that popular history teaches us about. This is something far more sophisticated, and far more familiar to anyone who knows the Hebrew Bible. The Druids, those enigmatic figures who have captured imaginations for centuries, weren't the forest-dwelling mystics of popular imagination. They were the intellectual and spiritual elite of a highly organized society with complex theological beliefs that would seem surprisingly familiar to any modern Christian or Jew. At the heart of Druidic society were the bards, not mere entertainers, but sacred musicians whose role extended far beyond simple performance. The ancient Greek historian Strabo identified these bards specifically as hymn makers, responsible for all temple music and the musical portions of religious services. But here's where the story takes a fascinating turn toward modern Christianity. These bards wore distinctive white robes during their religious duties. Today, when Anglican choristers don their white surplices for church services, they're unknowingly continuing a tradition that stretches back over 2 millennia to the pre-Christian temples of ancient Britain. This isn't coincidence, it's direct cultural inheritance, demonstrating how Druidic customs didn't disappear with Christianity's arrival but were absorbed and transformed. The archaeological evidence tells a story that Roman historians deliberately obscured. At sites like Stonehenge, Avebury, and even in the vicinity of what would become St. Paul's Cathedral in London, excavations have revealed the charred remains of animal sacrifices: sheep, oxen, deer, and goats. But notably absent is any evidence whatsoever of human sacrifice, despite the lurid tales that Roman writers spread about Druidic practices. These Roman accounts, it turns out, were pure propaganda, inventions designed to justify Roman conquest by portraying the Druids as barbaric. The archaeological record tells a different story entirely. At Stonehenge, archaeologists discovered an elaborate gold breastplate on the skeleton of an important Briton, similar to 5 others found across Britain and Ireland. These weren't the crude ornaments of primitive peoples, but sophisticated ceremonial objects that speak to a highly developed religious culture and possible connections to the Hebrew priesthood breastplate. Perhaps most startling of all are the linguistic discoveries that connect ancient Britain directly to Hebrew tradition. In Cornish folklore, entire sentences were preserved for generations, passed down orally without anyone understanding their meaning. When scholars finally transcribed these mysterious phrases, they discovered something extraordinary. They were pure Hebrew, and not just any Hebrew, but specific passages from the Psalms. "Lift up your heads, O ye gates, and be ye lift up ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in." Who is this King of glory? The Lord Yesu, he is the King of glory. These words, preserved in ancient British folk tradition, are direct quotations from Psalm chapter 24, but with one crucial difference: they identify Yesu as the King of Glory. Yesu, the pure Druidic form of the name Jesus, had been known and revered in Britain long before the first Christian missionaries arrived. This wasn't isolated linguistic borrowing. The evidence suggests something far more profound, that Druidic tradition represented what scholars call Old Covenant origins, a direct connection to the patriarchal religion of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The great, oral secret, transmitted by Druid sages from generation to generation wasn't Celtic mythology, but Hebrew tradition adapted and preserved in the British Isles. The theological sophistication of Druidic belief becomes even more remarkable when we examine their understanding of God's nature. Far from the polytheistic chaos that many assume characterized pre-Christian religion, the Druids proclaimed a clear monotheistic message: the Lord our God is one. But their monotheism wasn't simple, it was specifically Trinitarian. The Druids used oak trees as theological teaching tools, selecting trees with two main branches extending laterally from an upright trunk, forming a natural cross. On the right branch they carved Hessus, on the central trunk, Taranis, and on the left branch, Belinus. Over the entire structure, they inscribed Thou, the name of God. This wasn't merely symbolic decoration, it was systematic theological instruction about the Trinity, conducted centuries before Christian doctrine was formally developed. The parallel to Hebrew messianic prophecy is unmistakable. The Hebrew prophets consistently referred to their expected Messiah as the branch, and here were the Druids using branches to represent the coming savior figure they called Hessus. Mistletoe, too, served as another representation of Hessus, and the Druids looked forward to his coming with the same eager expectation that characterized Jewish messianic hope. When Christianity finally arrived in Britain, something unprecedented in religious history occurred. Julius Caesar had noted in 54 BC that the Druids made the immortality of the soul the foundation of all their teaching, using it as the primary motivation for virtuous living. They believed in bodily resurrection, a doctrine that many Jews of the period didn't accept, placing British religious understanding ahead of contemporary Jewish belief in this crucial area. The theological groundwork was so thoroughly prepared that the transition from Druidism to Christianity was remarkably smooth. Procopius of Caesarea, writing in 530 AD, recorded that all Druids acknowledged Jesus, Taran, Bel, one only God. The familiar name of their own deity was suddenly being preached as God incarnate, and the connection was immediate and natural. When Christian missionaries called upon the Druids to embrace the new faith, they weren't asking them to abandon their ancient beliefs so much as to lay them down for a fuller and more perfect revelation. The response was extraordinary. Druidic temples and colleges converted to Christian use with unprecedented ease. The priesthood embraced Christianity rapidly, and the general population followed willingly. Modern archaeologists and historians who have studied the evidence express consistent amazement at what they've discovered. Sir Norman Lockyer, after extensive research into megalithic remains, confessed his astonishment at the similarities between Semitic and British forms of worship. Edward Davies acknowledged the clear connection between Druidical and patriarchal religion. William Stukeley, through careful study of the evidence, concluded definitively that the religion of ancient Britain was the simple patriarchal religion. The evidence is so compelling that every critical and honest scholar who examines Druid ritual, customs, and teaching reaches the same conclusion. This wasn't primitive paganism, but sophisticated theology with clear connections to Hebrew tradition. The social organization of Druidic Britain further supports this picture of religious sophistication. Every British subject received 5 acres of land at birth as a hereditary right, while priests received 10 acres, reflecting their elevated status. But more significantly, priests enjoyed remarkable privileges that speak to their role as moral and spiritual leaders: exemption from military service, safe passage during wartime, financial support from their communities, and central roles in dispute resolution and peacemaking. This wasn't a society organized around warfare and conquest, but one structured to support spiritual development and moral leadership. The high ethical standards, emphasis on individual rights and liberty, promotion of peace, and sophisticated understanding of divine justice created what scholars recognize as perfect preparation for Christian civilization. Perhaps most remarkably, the ancient Britons never changed the name of the god. From the earliest Druidic period through the Christian era, they consistently worshipped one deity, Yesu, who would be recognized by Christians as Jesus. This represents an unbroken religious tradition spanning over a millennium, a continuity that challenges conventional understanding of British religious history. The Archdruid's ceremonial dress, with its gold Cymric cross running down the back of white robes, gold tiara, and matching breastplate, wasn't just elaborate pageantry, it was sophisticated religious symbolism that would be immediately recognizable to any Christian familiar with priestly vestments. The chevron bead, misunderstood by Romans as the mystical Druid's egg, was actually a profound theological symbol representing divine unity. What emerges from this evidence is a picture of ancient Britain that challenges everything popular history teaches about the Celtic world. Rather than savage tribes worshipping nature spirits and practicing human sacrifice, we find a sophisticated civilization with monotheistic theology, Trinitarian understanding, messianic expectation, belief in resurrection, and moral standards that prepared the ground for Christianity more thoroughly than anywhere else in the ancient world. The rapid, natural merging of Druidic tradition with Christianity in first-century Britain stands as one of the most remarkable religious transitions in human history. No other country witnessed such seamless integration of ancient and revealed religion. The facilities with which Druidic places of worship became Christian churches, the speed with which the priesthood embraced the new faith, and the eagerness with which the population accepted Christian teaching all point to divine preparation spanning centuries. If you would like further context and the rest of the story, check out previous videos and future videos. If you would like more information where to research this subject, pause this image and look into these resources or find resources in description. If you have book sources or links of your own on this subject, please share in comments or email me. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this forgotten biblical story. Leave a like, comment, share and subscribe. This is very helpful. Join me next time for another lost story of our biblical history. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe for more great content. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.